Midnight news coming to you live from Algiers with me, Madam Sian, to the headlines. 60 Palestinians were killed in 4 massacres committed by the Zionist occupation on the Gaza Strip, and the Palestinian Red Crescent confirms that thousands of residents in the Strip risk famine. Also coming up, the U.S. warns Israel that clashes with Hezbollah could spark regional war, while the UN reports humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And during his official visit to Austria, Algerian and Austrian foreign ministers stressed the need to expand cooperation across various sectors. Welcome back to the program. At the outset, the Palestinian Ministry of Health in the Gaza Strip announced Wednesday that the occupation forces committed 4 massacres, resulting in the death of 60 people and the injury of 140 others during the past 24 hours. The ministry added that these last massacres bring the death toll of the brutal Zionist aggression on the Gaza Strip to rise to 37,718 victims, the majority of whom are children and women, in addition to 86,377 who have been wounded. Palestinian Red Crescent Society said in a press statement that thousands of residents of the Gaza Strip face the risk of starvation. Palestinian Red Crescent called for the entry of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip's northern areas, stressing that airdrop-in operations did not meet the required needs in decreasing the percentage of hunger. And 9 months into the war, the situation in Gaza is worsening, with people struggling for food and water, while the Zionist occupation keeps the only border crossing closed, blocking vital aid and risking famine for 500,000 Gazans. Mohammed Khatil has more details.
It's already been 9 months into the war, and the situation is only getting worse for Palestinians. In this school shelter in Khan Yunis, people are lining up to get a small portion of a cooked meal from a charity kitchen to sustain their hunger for the day, as the flow of aid remains hindered.
We feel bad and we are struggling because we cannot find food. And if we find food, it is with difficulty. We use the food from the community kitchen to feed the children, and the situation is very difficult.
Running barefoot, this child is fetching some water, as it is almost nowhere to be found in the besieged strip. Here, you have to queue up for more than 4 hours to get some water to drink. But forget about water for cleaning and washing clothes. That is not available.
I was displaced from Rafah to a school in Khan Yunis, and life is not suitable for living at all. We struggle to get water. We wait for 4, 5 or 6 hours to find water, and then we go home. We save the water for drinking. As for cleaning and washing, we get the dirty water for the bathroom, and if we want to wash anything, there is no water available for washing. The available water is just for drinking.
Extreme hunger and diseases threaten thousands of Palestinians, especially children. More than 1 million children are now under direct threat due to malnutrition, including 3,500 children who are closer to death due to hunger, according to the government media office in Gaza.
We have reached famine. Until when are you waiting? Children are dying on the streets. They can't find food or water. Diseases are spreading among children, gastrointestinal inflammation and diarrhea.
The Zionist occupation persists on keeping the only border crossing linking Gaza to the outside world closed, thus preventing the flow of vital aid despite the 500,000 Gazans facing a severe risk of famine.
The United Nations said that the risks to humanitarian workers in the Gaza Strip are intolerable. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric told reporters that humanitarian operations have been repeatedly in the crosshairs of Gaza. Last week, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that there was a total lack of security in Gaza, hampering relief operations while famine loomed.
Of our humanitarian operations have repeatedly been in the crosshairs in Gaza. And I think you know the number of humanitarian workers that have been killed. We've repeatedly talked about humanitarian convoys shot at, and notably last Friday. We've talked about areas that were deconflicted, that were hit, hospitals, shelters, and so on. And the risks, frankly, are becoming increasingly intolerable.
The Al-Qassam Brigade, the military wing of Hamas, published scenes of its fighters targeting a Merkava tank as part of an armored Zionist force, noting that the targeting came after monitoring the movement of occupation vehicles for several days on Al-Bahr Street, south of the Tel Sultan neighborhood in the city of Rafah, south of the Strip.
بسم الله والله بإذن الله غير ندخل فيه. هذه بضاعتهم سترد إليه. هذه أموال ناسفة تم الاستيلاء عليها والحصول عليها التي يدمر بها الاحتلال منازل المواطنين الآمنين. إن شاء الله سترد إليهم. قد من الله علينا أن جهزنا للعدو أصنافا من الموت وكمائن لا عد لها ولا حد. إحنا الآن على الجزية. أول ما الهدف يكون في المكان إن شاء الله هنتعامل.
Saraya al-Quds, the military wing of the Islamic Jihad movement, published a video clip of its fighters shelling enemy soldiers around the Rafah land crossing and the positions of its vehicles near the Palestinian-Egyptian border south of Rafah.
لا رميت إذ رميت ولكن الله رمى بعون الله وتوفيق. يمر في إطار عملية طوفان الأقصى المباركة. يتم اليوم إطلاق عدد كبير من قذائف الهوى عيار 82 على القوات والحشودات العدو في معبر رفح الدولي. الله مولانا ولا مولى له، وللساعة موعدهم، الساعة أدهى وأمر. سرايا القدس لواء رفح.
The Hamas movement has urged accountability for occupation leaders regarding torture crimes against Palestinian prisoners and detainees, emphasizing the need to prevent their impunity. Marking the International Day in support of victims of torture, Hamas called for the immediate release of all prisoners from occupation prisons. The statement highlighted severe retribution faced by Palestinian prisoners and detainees since the beginning of the Gaza aggression, including starvation, humiliation, abuse, deliberate medical neglect, deprivation of food and medicine, and field executions. These actions have resulted in around 60 deaths under torture in occupation prisons, including about 40 individuals kidnapped from the Gaza Strip. The United Nations Committee to investigate Israeli practices in the occupied Palestinian territories expressed concern over violations against detainees in occupation prisons. A statement issued by the committee on Wednesday noted that detainees, both men and women, face harassment, assault, and intimidation using dogs. They are also prevented from communicating with their families or International Committee of the Red Cross and are denied guarantees provided by international law. The Algerian foreign minister and his Austrian counterpart, Alexander Schallenberg, discussed various international and regional issues of mutual concern, particularly the ongoing crisis in Gaza, which has persisted for over 8 months. According to the Algerian Foreign Ministry, the ministers reaffirmed their country's positions based on international law and the United Nations principles. During their working session, part of Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf's visit to Austria, they emphasized their hope for the UN to fulfill its critical role in addressing the complex crises affecting international relations.
We have also covered a wide range of political issues and will continue to cover more of similar issues during the lunch. These issues are of common interest and shared concern to our two countries. We have reviewed and exchanged views about the crisis situations prevailing mainly in the Middle East, where Gaza is undergoing unspeakable and unwarranted pain and suffering, and is confronted to mass killings and destructions on an unprecedented scale. We share the same concerns about all these crises and conflicts. We also share the same attachment to international law and to the principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter. I sincerely believe that in these troubled times, the entire humanity is in great need of the UN to continue to guide us and to show us the way forward.
In other developments, the United States warned the Zionist entity that a clash with Hezbollah might trigger a regional war, as UN agencies reported 10 children per day losing one or both legs and 500,000 Palestinians suffering catastrophic starvation in Gaza. In a meeting at the Pentagon, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that diplomacy is the best choice as worries of a massive war escalate.
And so diplomacy is by far the best way to prevent.
The division continues on internal front of the entity, with Netanyahu and his government coalition continuing their policies aimed at prolonging the war in Gaza and expanding it to southern Lebanon. Politicians, military personnel and academics are successively joining the list of those who reject the coalition led by Netanyahu. Usama Ayadi reports.
Opposition continues to resonate louder against the Prime Minister of the Zionist entity, Benjamin Netanyahu, after several steps taken by the Zionist leader for a direct war front in southern Lebanon. Zionist leaders, including the former Prime Minister of the occupation and former Minister of the Zionist War Council, Benny Gantz, described Netanyahu as a cursed man who poses an existential threat to the Zionist entity, stressing the necessity of avoiding the war that Netanyahu seeks to wage in southern Lebanon. Internationally, Netanyahu has not yet obtained the usual U.S. support for his plans on the northern front to the occupied territories. Washington, through its defense minister, said that it prefers a diplomatic solution to prevent the expansion of the conflict.
And so diplomacy is by far the best way to prevent more escalation. So we're urgently seeking a diplomatic agreement that restores lasting calm to Israel's northern border and enables civilians to return safely to their homes on both sides of the Israel-Lebanon border.
The United Nations Aid Chief Martin Griffiths expressed his concerns on Wednesday over the possible expansion of the Gaza war across the region, including in the West Bank.
We are worried about the potential for further tragedy and deaths and the events in the West Bank, as well as, of course, the threats and the possibilities in Lebanon.
Between Netanyahu's commitment to expanding his barbaric war to southern Lebanon and the reality of an exhausted army and heavy losses, both materially and morally, experts confirmed that stopping the spread of the conflict into Lebanon or any other region would not succeed except by stopping the war of extermination against Gaza.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan accused Western powers of backing Zionist plans to attack Lebanon and spread war throughout the region on Wednesday. Erdogan said that Netanyahu's plan to spread the war to the region will lead to a great disaster. His remarks came as concerns soared over the escalating cross-border exchanges of fire between the Zionist forces and Hezbollah, fueling fears it could descend into an all-out total war.
I'm saying this clearly. Netanyahu's plan to spread the war to the region with the consent of the West will lead to catastrophe. The Islamic world and brotherly countries in the Middle East need to react to this bloody plan before the West.
Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune received the U.S. Ambassador Elizabeth Moore-Aben to discuss strengthening bilateral ties between the two nations. According to a statement from the Algerian presidency, the meeting was attended by Boualem, director of the Office of the President. Ambassador Aben highlighted efforts for a direct flight between Algiers and New York. She also emphasized joint efforts in the UN Security Council for a Gaza ceasefire, reaffirming their commitment to global issues. Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune also received the ambassador of Senegal to Algiers, Serene Diaye, who paid a farewell visit marking the end of his tenure. According to the Algerian presidency, the meeting was also attended by the director of the Office of the Presidency of the Republic, Boualem. Ambassador Diaye confirmed that relations between Algeria and Senegal have significantly strengthened in recent years.
I was honored to meet His Excellency the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, and extended official greetings to him. As my mission in Algeria comes to an end, I want to express my gratitude and thanks to His Excellency for all his support. I also extend my heartfelt thanks to the brotherly Algerian people who warmly embraced me. From Constantine to Oran, anywhere I went, I was welcomed with open arms. I would also like to thank Mr. Ahmed Attaf, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and all his staff. In recent years, the relationship between Algeria and Senegal has been further strengthened, thanks to the sound vision of His Excellency, the President of the Republic.
The Senegalese ambassador added that Algeria and Senegal have achieved cooperation on several levels and in several fields thanks to Algerian investment in Senegal and the Islamic and historical cultural ties linking the two peoples. Let's take a listen.
We have achieved tangible cooperation at various levels, such as the opening of the Algerian Bank in Dakar. We have a permanent showroom there too. We have a maritime line and an airline operated by the Algerian Air Company. Senegal is almost the only country which has 6 flights every week. This is really important in addition to Algerian investments in Senegal. We have also Islamic and cultural ties that have developed further. We are united with historic bonds, and these efforts will continue.
Within the framework of his official visit to Austria, Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf reviewed with his Austrian counterpart Alexander Schallenberg ways and prospects for strengthening the historical relations that have united the two countries for more than 6 decades. A statement by the Algerian Foreign Ministry explained that the working session between the two sides focused on the areas that constitute the priorities of Algeria's development agenda at the current stage, and at the same time are at the heart of the priorities of bilateral cooperation.
In this context, our two countries have embarked together with Italy, as you have mentioned, and Germany on an ambitious project for the development, transport and marketing of green hydrogen. Algeria attaches great importance to that project known as the South H2 corridor, which will connect North Africa to the heart of Europe, with the aim of reducing both regions' dependence on non-renewable sources of energy. We both express satisfaction at the agreement reached recently between our two departments in charge of energy to conclude a memorandum of understanding on renewable energies that will undoubtedly open new prospects for our political cooperation in this area.
The Algerian Foreign Minister stressed in this context that Algeria attaches great importance to the Southern Corridor project for transporting and marketing green hydrogen to Europe, stressing that he and his Austrian counterpart expressed their satisfaction with the agreement recently reached between the energy ministers of the two countries with the aim of concluding a memorandum of understanding on renewable energies.
Mindful of the various opportunities for cooperation and partnership, our role as representatives of our two governments is to ensure that the institutional mechanisms and the legal framework are fit for the purpose that we want to achieve, which is that of giving a new momentum to our bilateral relations. In this regard, Mr. Minister, I think that we can agree on the need to finalize negotiations. 7 bilateral agreements that are currently under consideration. We have also envisaged the importance of activating the Joint Business Council, which we hope will be the driving force in enhancing the economic cooperation between Algeria and Austria.
Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf also pointed out the need to ensure that the institutional mechanisms and legal framework are compatible with the goal of giving new momentum to bilateral relations, revealing agreement with his Austrian counterpart on the urgent need to conclude negotiations on 7 bilateral agreements under preparation.
Finally, we have discussed the partnership between Algeria and the European Union, and we will continue to do the same over the lunch. To say the least, the recent developments witnessed in this regard have emphasized the need to have a genuine dialogue with our European friends with a view to reinvigorating our efforts towards building a balanced partnership, a partnership that is truly respectful of the vital interests of each party, and a partnership that fully takes into account Algeria's aspirations in terms of economic development as its major concern as a reliable, responsible and trustworthy partner of the European continent.
The head of Algerian diplomacy, Ahmed Attaf, indicated that the recent developments regarding the partnership between Algeria and the European Union confirmed the necessity of holding a real dialogue with the aim of increasing efforts towards building a balanced partnership. Mr. Attaf stressed the need for the Algerian-European partnership to respect the vital interests of each party, underlining that it must also fully take into account Algeria's aspirations in the field of economic development.
Mindful of the various opportunities for cooperation and partnership, our role as representatives of our two governments is to ensure that the institutional mechanisms and the legal framework are fit for the purpose that we want to achieve, which is that of giving a new momentum to our bilateral relations. In this regard, Mr. Minister, I think that we can agree on the need to finalize negotiations. 7 bilateral agreements that are currently under consideration. We have also envisaged the importance of activating the Joint Business Council, which we hope will be the driving force in enhancing the economic cooperation between Algeria and Austria.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for following our program. See you tomorrow.